Hello and welcome. My name is Alan, and today we're going to talk a bit about Social Security and Medicare. More on the Social Security end, really, but because one thing we've always seen that Republicans do their damnedest to try is kill Social Security and Medicare. And it baffles the fuck out of me. It's popular, motherfuckers, but they're like, no, we want to kill it. Why? Why? Anyway, let's look at this. The Federal Old Age and Survivors Insurance Trust Fund and Federal Disability Insurance Trust Fund. Collectively, the Social Security Trust Fund or trust funds are trust funds that provide for payment of Social Security, old age, and disability insurance benefits administered by the U.S. Social Security Administration. The Social Security Administration collects payroll taxes and uses the money collected to pay old age survivors and disability insurance benefits by way of trust funds. When the program runs a surplus, the excess funds increase the value of the trust fund. As of 2021, the trust fund contained, or alternatively was owed, $2,908 trillion. The trust fund is required by law to be invested in non-marketable securities issued and guaranteed by the full faith and credit of the national government. These securities earn a market rate of interest. Excess funds are used by the government for non-Social Security purposes, creating the obligations to the Social Security Administration and thus program recipients. However, Congress could cut these obligations by altering the law. Trust fund obligations are considered intragovernmental debt, a compilation of the public or national debt. As of December 2022, it's estimated, the governmental debt was $6.18 trillion of the $31.4 trillion national debt. Of this $6.18 trillion, $2.7 trillion is an obligation to the Social Security Administration. According to the Social Security trustees who oversee the program and report on its financial condition, program costs are expected to exceed non-interest income from 2010 onward. However, due to the interest earned at a 3.6% rate in 2014, the program will run an overall surplus that adds to the fund through the end of 2019. Under current law, the securities in the trust fund represent a legal obligation the government must honor when program revenues are no longer sufficient to fully fund benefit payments. However, when the trust fund is used to cover program deficits in a given year, the trust fund balance is reduced. One projection scenario estimates that by 2035 the trust fund could be exhausted. Thereafter, Payroll taxes are projected to only cover approximately 83% of the program obligations. There have been various proposals to address this shortfall, including reducing government expenditures, such as by raising the retirement age, tax increases, and borrowing. So we get an idea. The greatest portion, you know, it's not welfare. People pay in to Social Security all their working life. It is a right they have earned. Now, there are other things, like the funds here to help, but too often people on the right cry and whine and bitch and moan, oh, we gotta cut Social Security and Medicare. These are programs that help people. But you don't give a shit, do you? Nah. You keep giving tax cuts to the ultra rich and tell everybody else to go fuck themselves. And that's why they're like, we gotta cut Social Security. No, motherfucker. No, you don't. The Social Security Trust Fund comprises two separate funds that hold federal government debt obligations related to what are traditionally thought of as Social Security benefits. The larger of these funds is the Old Age and Survivors Insurance Trust Fund, which holds in trust special interest bearing federal government securities bought with surplus old age and securities insurance payroll tax revenues. The second, smaller fund is the Disability Insurance Trust Fund, which holds in trust more of the special interest bearing federal government securities bought with the surplus disability insurance payroll tax revenues. The trust funds are off budget and treated separately in certain ways from other federal spending and other trust funds of the federal government. From the U.S. Code, exclusion of Social Security from all budgets. It is Title 13, Section 13301A, November the 5th of 1990, 104 Stat 1388, 623, provided that, notwithstanding any other provision of law, the receipts and disbursements of the Federal Old Age and Survivors Insurance Trust Fund and the Federal Disability Insurance Trust Fund shall not be counted as new budget authority outlays, receipts, or deficit or surplus for purposes of 1. The budget of the U.S. government as submitted by the President, and 2. The congressional budget, or 3. The balanced budget and the Emergency Deficit Control Act of 1985. 1935. The trust funds run surpluses on the amount paid in by current workers is more than the amount paid out to current beneficiaries. These surpluses are invested in special U.S. government securities, which are deposited into the trust funds. If the trust funds begin running deficits, meaning more in benefits are paid out than the contributions paid in, the Social Security Administration is empowered to redeem the securities and use those funds to cover the deficit. Now, the question is, why don't they just buy bonds? Something that is guaranteed to rise? Because I understand you want to have extra fundage available and everything, but what you're putting the money into is not doing what it's necessarily supposed to. Put it into bonds, something that is guaranteed to rise. Anyway, like I said, the great majority, though, is paid in by citizens, by workers. Governance. The Board of Trustees and the Trust Funds is composed of 6 members: Secretary of the Treasury, Secretary of Labor, Secretary of Health and Human Services, Commissioner of Social Security, and 2 members appointed by the President and confirmed by the Senate for a term of 4 years. These are the current members: Janet Yellen, Julie Sue, Xavier Becerra, Martin O'Malley, and then the 2 trustees are vacant. It's gotten so bad we can't even appoint the 2 open members because political toxicity in this country. The Board of Trustees holds the trust funds. The managing trustee is responsible for investing the funds, which has been delegated to the Bureau of the Fiscal Service. Now, the Social Security system is primarily a pay-as-you-go system, meaning that payments to current retirees come from the current payments into the system. The program was initially established in 1935 in response to the Great Depression. The first to file for Social Security was Ida Mae Fuller in 1940. Fuller paid $24.75 in taxes during her 3 years working under the Social Security program, and drew an aggregate of $22,889 in benefits before passing at the age of 100. So yeah, You divide 2475 by 3. Um, so in essence, she was making 8, 16, 24, yeah, about $8 an hour, or no, $8 a year that she paid in. Now, you retire at, I think even then it was 65. She lived to 100. So, this represents a ratio of $925 in benefits for every dollar she paid into the program. You may go, how is that possible? How can it be sustainable? The more workers you have that are working, they pay more in. So, in all facts, it builds itself to help the previous generations that, worked before. In 1977, President Jimmy Carter and the 95th Congress increased the FICA tax to fund Social Security, phased in gradually into the 1980s. In the early 80s, financial projections of the Social Security Administration indicated near-term revenue from payroll taxes would not be sufficient to fully fund near-term benefits, plus raising the possibility of benefit cuts. The federal government appointed the National Commission on Social Security Reform, headed by Alan Greenspan, who had not yet been named chairman of the Federal Reserve, to investigate what additional charges or changes to federal law were necessary to shore up the fiscal health of the Social Security program. The Greenspan Commission projected that the system would be solvent for the entirety of its 75-year forecast period, with certain recommendations. The changes in federal law enacted in 1983 and signed by President Reagan, and pursuant to the recommendations of the Greenspan Commission, advanced the time frame for previously scheduled payroll tax increases, though it raised slightly the payroll tax for the self-employed to equal the employee rate, change certain benefit calculations, and raise the retirement age to 67 by the year 2027. As of the end of the calendar year of 2010, the accumulated surplus in the Social Security Trust Fund stood at just about $2.6 trillion. Social Security benefits are paid from a combination of Social Security payroll taxes paid by the current workers and interest income earned by the Social Security Trust Fund. According to the projections of Social Security Administration, the trust fund will continue to show net growth until 2022 because the nearest interest generated by its bonds and the revenue from payroll taxes exceeds the amount needed to pay benefits. After 2022, without increases in Social Security taxes or cuts in benefits, the fund is projected to decrease each year until being fully exhausted by 2034. At this point, if legislation is not taken, the benefits would be reduced. What you need to do is increase on how much the Social Security tax takes effect. Right now, only the first, like I said, 115,000, I think, is taxed for Social Security. Billionaires, for them, that's just hours of work. They don't really work. And yet they whine and cry about it. No, fuck you, motherfucker. But yeah, the Social Security Trust Fund will be depleted by 2034 based on current law projections. Payments to beneficiaries thereafter will be limited to program tax receipts. What you do is you raise the amount which can be taxed. This way it don't hurt regular people. All it affects is the fucking rich, who will have to pay more into it. Yet they whine if they've got to pay a penny more. The bitches. It's honestly disgusting. And they need smacked around a bit. The 2015 trustee report press release, which covered 2014 statistics, stated, including income including interest to the combined OASDI trust funds amounted to $884 billion in 2014. And again, this is just for like the first $100,000 or so a year that can be taxed. Billionaires can pay so much fucking more. Millionaires and billionaires. It's only a percentage. But they whine and piss like the little bitches they are. $756 billion in net contributions, $30 billion from taxation of benefits, $98 billion in interest, and less than $1 billion in reimbursements from the general fund of the Treasury, almost exclusively resulting from the 2012 payroll tax legislation. Total expenditures from the combined OASDI trust funds amounted to $859 billion in 2014. So yeah. Expenditures $859 billion and income $884 billion. So it's still a soluble program, but fuckers want to fuck it over. Non-interest income fell below program costs in 2010 for the first time since 1983. Program costs are projected to exceed non-interest income throughout the remainder of the 75-year period. The asset reserves of the combined OASDI trust funds increased by $25 billion in 2014 to a total of $2.79 trillion. During 2014, the estimated 166 million people had earnings covered by Social Security and paid payroll taxes. Social Security paid benefits of $848 billion in the calendar year 2014. There were about 58 million beneficiaries at the end of the calendar year. The cost of $6.1 billion to administer the program in 2014 was 0.7% of total expenditures. So the program's not even that expensive itself to run. You know, 6.1 billion. You notice the thing they never want to fucking cut, though. Military. Go have that giant ass military. No. No, we don't. We could cut that son of a bitch by about half. And still be the #1 military in the fucking world. The combined trust fund asset reserves earned interest at an effective annual rate of 3.6% in 2014. Some basic equations for understanding the fund balance include the fund ending balance for a given year equals the fund starting balance plus program revenues plus interest minus program payouts. The program annual surplus or deficit, if negative, equals program revenues plus interest minus program expenses. Program annual cash surplus or deficit, if negative, equals program revenues minus program expenses. Right now, it's all soluble. Program revenues has several components, including payroll tax contributions, taxation of benefits, and an accounting entry to reflect recent payroll tax cuts during 2011 and 2012 to make the fund whole, as if these tax cuts had not occurred. These all add to the program revenues. Now, during 2018, the initial balance as of January the 1st was $2,780 billion. An additional $710 billion in payroll tax revenue and $87 billion in interest added to the fund during 2016, while expenses of $776 billion were removed from the fund as of December the 31st, 2016. Balance for $2,801 billion, i.e., 2,780 billion plus 710 billion plus 87 billion minus 776 billion equals 2,801 billion. So yeah. So you got 2,780 billion, which is just 2,780 billion. I don't know why they put thousand in there, but yeah. In all honesty, 710 billion plus the 87 billion makes 297 billion. You remove 776 billion. So just with these three items, you have a surplus. And so it tacks onto this. And you go from 2,780 or $2,780,000,000 to $2,801,000,000. So you're gaining what, 21 billion? Yeah. Yeah, 21 billion. Try and do the math in my head, but yeah, $21 billion. In an annually issued report released in August 2021, the U.S. Treasury Department announced that the Old Age and Survivors Trust Fund was projected to be able to pay scheduled benefits until 2033, while the Disability Insurance Trust Fund was projected to be able to pay benefits through 2057. So they're saying that end is more soluble. The Old Age and Survivors Trust Fund, yeah, that's the one they say is less soluble. And through 2034, when the funds were hypothetically combined. So, yeah, 2034 altogether is when they're saying it should no longer have a surplus. One year and 8 years earlier, respectively, than the previous report found. In June 2022, the Treasury Department issued an updated report for the Old Age and Survivors Insurance and Disability Insurance Trust Funds, with revised projections for their ability to pay scheduled benefits to 2034 and 2057, respectively, and by 2035 when hypothetically combined due to accelerated recovery from the COVID-19 recession. So, 2034, that it's up a year from the Old Age and Survivors Trust Fund as predicted earlier. 2057, it's still the same for the Disability Insurance Fund, Trust Fund. And altogether, 2035, when combined, when it was 2034. So, they're saying, yeah, it's actually gotten better, but it's still due to run out. The Treasury Department issued an annual trustees report for the Old Age and Survivors Insurance and Disability Insurance Trust Funds with depletion date projections for the funds estimated in 2033 and 2097 respectively, and by 2034 when combined. So yeah, everything's okay. So the 2057 is now up to 2097. We're still on the other ones. 2033 is what it goes back down to. 2034 is still at what we're at combined. In May 2024, the annual trustees report was released with depletion date projections for the funds estimated till 2033 and 2098 respectively, and by 2035 when combined. The 1990 Board of Trustees annual report estimated the depletion date of the combined funds would be in 2043. The 2000 and 2010 annual reports estimated the depletion date of the combined funds would be in 2037, and the 2020 annual report estimated the depletion date of the combined funds would be 2035. In a survey of 210 members of the American Economics Association published in November of 2006, 85% agreed with the statement. A gap between Social Security funds and expenditures will become unsustainably large in the next 50 years if current policies remain unchanged. But yeah, I talk about under previous presidencies, George W. Bush, Barack Obama. So yeah, Barack Obama under Joe Biden. One they're not mentioning here is the evil committed under Ronald fucking Reagan. Now, this is from the Social Security Organization Administration. Straight from them. Social Security is financed through a dedicated payroll tax. Employers and employees each pay 6.2% of wages up to the taxable maximum. So it's up to $168,600. Again, that's a blink of an eye for fucking millionaires and billionaires. While the self-employed pay 12.4%. So yeah, employees and employers pay 6.2%. So altogether, that's the 12.4% as the self-employed would pay. Total income, including interest, to the combined OASI and DI trust funds amounted to 1.351 trillion in 2023, 1.233 trillion from the net payroll tax contributions, and $51 billion from taxation of benefits, and $67 billion in interest. So yeah, 2023, 1,351,000,000,000 essentially in income. But again, 1.233 trillion from net payroll tax contributions. Another 51 billion going in from the taxation of benefits, and 67 billion in interest when it comes to like all the other things it's invested into, bonds and trusts and all that. I'm like, I guess it's better than stocks. But yeah, I just the payroll tax rates are set by law, and the OASI and DI apply to earnings up to a certain amount. This amount, called the contribution and benefit base or taxable maximum, rises as average wage increases. It needs to be increased now. As far as the taxable maximum that can be taxed. Yeah. If you would raise it to like 250,000, oh my God, that would keep it soluble for so much longer. Tax rates for employees and employers, each under the current law. So yeah, 5.3% of it goes to the old age and survivors insurance, and 0.9 goes to disability insurance. Altogether, 6.2%, as we mentioned before. So yeah. Let's go ahead and pull this up as well. Yeah, 2023, $160,200. The next year, it went up to $168,600. Like I said, it needs to go up to $250,000 instead of just $168,600 right now. I mean, honestly. But anyway, the other big program Republicans love to threaten to cut: Medicare, health insurance for the elderly. Medicare is a federal health insurance program in the U.S. for people age 65 or older and younger people with disabilities, including those at the end stage renal disease and amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease. It was begun in 1965 under the Social Security Administration and is now administered by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. I'm currently on state Medicaid. It's not the national one, it's the one offered by my state. In 2022, Medicare provided health insurance for 65 million individuals. More than 57 million people age 65 and older, and about 8 million younger people. According to annual Medicare trustees reports and research by Congress MedPAC Group, Medicare covers about half of the healthcare expenses of those enrolled. enrollees almost always cover most of the remaining costs by taking additional private insurance and or by joining a public Medicare Part C and or Part D health plan. In 2022, spending by Medicare trustees topped $900 billion per the trustees report table, of which $423 billion came from the U.S. Treasury and the rest primarily from the Part A Trust Fund, which is funded by payroll taxes, and the premiums paid by beneficiaries. Households that retired in 2013 paid only 13 to 41% of the benefit dollars they were expected to receive. 13 to 40. Yeah, if you want to end one of them, you can end Medicare simply by making it a single payer service. Period. We would save money because the reports have shown that. We know it's true. We could save money by doing that. And then on top of that, you could basically clear out the idea of Medicare. Social Security I would still keep, but I would have a single payer healthcare system that covers everybody. And get treated like they do now. Although even now, it's not great. But yeah. How is Medicare funded? The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services is the federal agency that runs the Medicare program. CMS is a branch of the Department of Health and Human Services that also monitors Medicaid programs offered by each state. In 2022, Medicare covered over 65 million people. Total expenditures in 2022 were $905 billion. This money comes from Medicare trust funds. Yeah. Social Security raise the amount so the rich have to pay more into the fund. It won't affect the average person. It just says we're going to raise it from 168,600 or 168,600 that can be taxed for Social Security to 250,000. Or hell, do it to 500,000. $500,000. Again, if you're a billionaire, you ain't even going to miss that. If you're a millionaire, drop in the bucket. Although, as I said, some of them cry if you try to take a penny from them. Whiny ass bitches. it should be taking care of people, taking care of everyone. Let's see. Next link we got up here, we'll get into that in a moment. Okay, we're going to move you over here. And this is from AARP, the 10 Social Security myths that refuse to die. Where's that first one at? Social Security is going broke is myth number 1. The facts: as long as workers and employers pay payroll taxes, Social Security will not run out of money. It's a pay-as-you-go system. Revenue coming in from FICA, Federal Insurance Contributions Act, and SECA, Self-Employed Contributions Act, taxed largely cover the benefits going out. And like I said, you raise the taxable minimum that can be taxed, yeah, there's no excuse for this shit. Social Security does face funding challenges. For decades, it collected more than it paid out, building a surplus that stood at $2.79 trillion at the end of 2023, but the system is starting to pay out more than it takes in, largely because the retiree population is growing faster than the working population and living longer. Without changes on how Social Security is financed, the surplus is projected to run out in 2035, according to the latest annual report from the program's trustees. Oh, yeah, quit going all the way freaking down. Even then, Social Security won't be broke. It will still collect tax revenue and pay benefits, but it will only bring in enough to pay 83% of scheduled benefits, according to the latest estimate. To avoid that outcome, Congress will need to take steps to shore up Social Security finances, as it did in 1983, the last time the program nearly depleted its reserves. The steps then included raising the full retirement age, which is part of myth 2, increasing the payroll tax rate, and introducing an income tax on benefits, which is part of myth 8. And yeah, increasing the tax rate, that's kind of what I've been talking about here, the minimum, payroll minimum. So if you increase the amount that can be taxed, you increase the revenue greatly. But no one's, you'll hear people whining and crying, but the poor rich, they have earned their money. Fuck you, motherfucker. Myth 2, the Social Security retirement age is 65. Full retirement age, the age when a worker qualifies to file for 100% of the benefit calculated from lifetime earnings history, is 66 and 6 months. For people born in 1957, 66 and 8 months for those born in 1958, and will settle at 67, is $66.06 for people born in 1957. $66 and 8 months, so an increase of 2 months, for those born in 1958, and will settle at 67 for those born in 1960 and after. So yeah, that's where we're at. The 65 threshold is a long time Social Security truth that became a myth. When Social Security was created in 1935, 65 was set as the age of eligibility. In later decades, the minimum eligibility age was lowered to 62 when people could claim a reduced benefit, but 65 remained the standard for full retirement. That changed with the 1983 overhaul, which raised the retirement age to reduce Social Security's costs. The increase is being phased in over time. 2002 was the last year which people turning 65 could claim their full benefit. The annual COLA is guaranteed. Since 1975, Social Security law has mandated that benefit amounts be adjusted annually to keep pace with inflation. But there is no requirement that this cost of living adjustment, COLA, produce a yearly increase. The COLA is being tied to the federal index of prices for select consumer goods and services called the CPI-W. Benefits are adjusted annually based on the changes in the CPI-W from the third quarter of one year to the third quarter of the next. In the third quarter of 2023, the index showed a 3.2% increase in prices, so benefits are 3.2% higher in 2024. But if the index doesn't show a statistically measurable rise in prices, if there's effectively no inflation, then there's no adjustment to benefits. This has happened 3 times since the current formula was adopted, in 2010, 2011, and 2016. Whether or not it produces a benefit increase, this process is automatic. It does not involve the President or Congress. They would have to take separate action to change the COLA. Myth 4, members of Congress don't pay into Social Security. Common complaint about Social Security is that members of Congress don't bother fixing the program because it doesn't cover them. Actually, it does. Members of Congress came under the Social Security umbrella in 1984, along with the rest of the federal workforce, as part of the sweeping changes to the program enacted the previous year. Before that, senators and representatives did not pay into Social Security and were instead fully covered by a pension plan called the Civil Service Retirement System. Those in office on January 1st, 1984, were allowed to remain in the CSRS, but only in conjunction with Social Security. If you're curious, 1 senator and 4 House members remain from those days. Those elected since are covered by Social Security as well as a pension program that replaced the CSRS. Either way, members of Congress pay into Social Security just like most American workers. Myth 5, the government raised Social Security to pay for other programs. The two trust funds that pay out Social Security benefits, one for retirees and the other their survivors, the other for one for retirees and their survivors, the other for people with disabilities, have never been part of the federal government's general fund. Social Security is a separate, well-funded program. The federal government does, however, borrow from Social Security. That's how, or here's how, Social Security's tax revenue is, by law, invested in special U.S. Treasury securities. As with all Treasury bonds, the federal government can spend the proceeds on a variety of programs, but as with all bondholders, Treasury has to pay the money back with interest. Social Security redeems the securities to pay benefits. The borrowing fuels the notion that the government is raiding or even stealing from Social Security and leaving it with nothing but IOUs. But the government has always made full repayment, and the interest increases Social Security's assets to the tune of $66.9 billion in 2023. Myth number 6, undocumented immigrants drain Social Security. Some have blamed problems with Social Security's financial health on undocumented immigrants draining the system's resources. It's a popular complaint, but a false one. Non-citizens who live and work in the U.S. legally can qualify for Social Security under the same terms as native-born and naturalized Americans, but undocumented people are not allowed to claim benefits. Thus, they don't drain the system. There is evidence that undocumented workers actually improve Social Security's bottom line. So yes, they don't receive the benefits, but taxes are still deducted from their paycheck. Some do obtain Social Security numbers under false pretenses, and payroll taxes are withheld from their wages, even though they are not eligible to later collect benefits. A report by Social Security actuaries said that undocumented immigrants made a net contribution of around $12 billion to the program in 2010, and that their earnings would likely continue to benefit the financial status of Social Security. Myth 7. Social Security is like a retirement savings account. The government does not stow your payroll tax contributions in a personal account for you to be paid out with interest when you retire. Your benefit is based on how much money you earned over your working life, not on how much you paid into the system. As noted above, those contributions fund benefits for current retirees and their survivors and people with disabilities. When you retire, those still working will cover your benefits and so on. Yeah, see, that's the idea. Over their lifetimes, most people get more from Social Security and Medicare, which is also partially funded by payroll tax contributions, than they pay in, according to analyses by the Urban Institute, a nonpartisan think tank. You might think of Social Security less like saving for retirement. There are other vehicles for that, and more like an earned benefit. The government promises to pay so you have at least some income in your later years. Emphasis on some. Contrary to another common misperception, Social Security is not meant to replace your entire work income. On average, it provides about 40% of the beneficiary's pre-retirement earnings. The formula for calculating benefits is weighted so that they replace a larger percentage of income for lower wage workers and a larger percentage for upper income earners. Myth 8. You don't pay taxes on Social Security benefits. This was true until 1984. The Social Security overhaul passed by Congress and signed by Reagan the year before included a provision that made a portion of Social Security benefits taxable, depending on your income level. You will pay federal income tax on up to 50% of your benefits if your income for the year is $25,000 to $34,000 for an individual filer and $32,000 to $44,000 for a couple filing jointly. Above those thresholds, up to 85% of benefits are taxable. Below them, you don't owe the IRS anything on your benefits. Roughly speaking, Social Security counts as income the money you get from work, pensions, and investments, non-taxable interest, and half of your Social Security benefits. You might also owe state taxes on your Social Security income if you live in Colorado, Connecticut, Kansas, Minnesota, Montana, New Mexico, Rhode Island, Vermont, Utah, or West Virginia. Their rules on taxing benefits vary widely. Contact the local state agency to find out more. Myth number 9, an ex-spouse's benefits come out of your own. The facts. If you are divorced, your former spouse may be eligible to collect Social Security benefits on your earnings record or vice versa. As with benefits for a current spouse, these can be up to 50% of the benefit amount. You are entitled to a full 50% of the amount you are entitled to at full retirement age. But those ex-spouse or spouse benefits don't reduce your Social Security. They are distinct payments and have no effect on what you receive each month, even if both current and a former spouse for multiple former spouses are collecting them. You get the benefit you're entitled to based on your earnings history and the age when you file for Social Security. And myth 10, you lose benefits permanently if you keep working. Social Security does have a rule called the earnings limit or earnings test that can temporarily reduce the benefits of people who still work, but it doesn't apply to all working beneficiaries and is not permanent. The rule only covers people who claim benefits before full retirement age and continue working. In this circumstance, Social Security withholds a portion of your benefits if earnings from work exceed a set cap, which changes every year and differs depending on how close you are to full retirement age. In 2024, If you are working, collecting benefits, and still not reach full retirement age until a year later, your Social Security benefits will be reduced by $1 for every $2 in earnings before you hit $22,320. If you will reach full retirement age in 2024, the formula is $1 less in benefits for every $3 in earnings above $59,520. In the month when you hit full retirement age, the earnings test goes away. There's no benefit reduction, regardless of your income. Social Security also adjusts your benefit upward so that over time you recoup the money that was withheld. So yeah, it's given out a different way, but it doesn't permanently end your Social Security rights. Now, Reagan and Bush robbed Social Security fund. And this is from the Telegram. I recently finished the book, Perfectly Legal by David K. Johnston. The book concerns the American tax system and how it allows the rich to avoid paying their fair share of taxes. Perfectly Legal is an eye-opening expose of a tax system that coddles the rich while steamrolling everyone else. Let's take Social Security taxes, for example. According to Mr. Johnson, Social Security was originally a pay-as-you-go benefit system. Under the Reagan administration in 1983, unemployment was at 10% and budget deficits were growing exponentially. President Ronald Reagan faced multiple social issues that threatened to derail tax cuts for the rich. What he needed was a diversion. Enter the Social Security insolvency scare. Congress, with Mr. Reagan's blessing, raised workers' Social Security taxes to 6.2%, or 6.2 cents per dollar of salary, up to $87,000. Individuals making $87,000 or under would be taxed on 100% of their salary. $1 million salary would be taxed only up to the $87,000 ceiling. That's what I'm talking about. Raising the taxable minimum or maximum. Yeah. A good deal for the rich, but not so good for the middle class and poor. From 1984 to 2002, Uncle Sam collected $1.7 trillion more in Social Security taxes than it shelled out in benefits. To pay for huge tax cuts for the rich and keep government operational, Reagan and Bush II robbed the Social Security tax fund. The rich became richer at the expense of the working man's retirement fund. Mr. Johnson's book will enlighten, shock, and redefine the redistribution of wealth myth. Now, they took the money out of Social Security to pay for tax cuts, not other programs, tax cuts for the rich. Or they may have dipped in to say, this is how we're going to do things, so we can say, hey, look, government's still fine. Yeah, Reagan dipped his hands into Social Security and basically pulled out a middle finger to America. Analysis spotlights the lasting pain inflicted by Reagan's Social Security cuts. Life expectancy in the U.S. fell during the same period that a Reagan-era law raised the retirement age by 2 years. And this is something the right wing still wants to do. They're like, let's raise the minimum age. Or, let's cut spending on it. No, motherfucker. How about you cut fucking spending on the military and raise the maximum cap on the fucking rich that Social Security can tax? No, you don't think about that. You're like, poor rich people. In 1983, just before signing legislation that cut Social Security benefits, then President Ronald Reagan declared that we're entering an age when average Americans will live longer and live more productive lives. But Reagan's assumption of ever-rising life expectancy in the U.S. turned out to be false. According to a new analysis, a fact with painful consequences that for those who saw the Social Security benefits pared back thanks to the 1983 law's gradual increase of the full retirement age, the age at which one is eligible for unreduced Social Security payments. Yeah, as I said, he dipped his fingers into the Social Security program and pulled out a middle finger for America. As Connor Smith wrote Monday for the People's Policy Project, a left-wing think tank, the Social Security Amendments of 1983, hiked the full retirement age from 65 in 2000 to 67 by the end of 2022. So they're going to make it to where you can't get paid the full Social Security benefits until you're 67. What this actually meant was not that the age at which people could retire and start drawing Social Security benefits changed. That remained at 62, Smith explained. Instead, by raising what's called the full retirement age by 2 years, the law effectively cut benefit levels across the board regardless of the age of any particular individual. If of any particular age that any particular individual began claiming Social Security benefits. The result is that those retiring at 62 today face a 50% greater penalty for retiring before the change than they would have before 2000. The 1983 law was an outgrowth of a special presidential commission headed by Alan Greenspan, the right-wing economist. God, I cannot pronounce properly today. Who would go on to serve as chair of the Federal Reserve for nearly 2 decades. Smith noted that before final passage of the measure, which cleared the House and Senate with bipartisan support, including from then Senator Joe Biden, a popular argument for raising the retirement age was that life expectancy had increased so people should work for longer. That turned out to be bullshit! The presumption that the increase in life expectancy since Social Security's implementation would continue as the retirement age rose. But in reality, something peculiar happened, Smith wrote. Over the same period during which the 1983 law forced the retirement age up from 65 to 67, life expectancy in the U.S. actually declined. In 2000, U.S. life expectancy was 76.8 years. According to the data released last December, life expectancy in 2021 was 76.4 years. This was the second consecutive year of significant life expectancy decline. That's a drop of 0.4 years over a time span when the full retirement age rose by nearly 2 years. Smith observed. So not only have Americans seen their benefits cut by an increase in the full retirement age, they now also face a particularly morbid version of a benefit cut in the form of shorter lives. So you have to work 2 years longer, and it turns out, hey, lifespans in the U.S. are not extending. The new analysis comes as congressional Republicans are openly advocating further increases in the retirement age, with one GOP lawmaker recently declaring that people actually want to work longer. No, they don't, you dumb fuck. In a policy agenda released last year, the House Republican Study Committee echoed Reagan-era arguments in favor of raising the full retirement age to 70. You can go and fuck yourself, Republicans! A change that would cut Social Security benefits across the board at a time when many retirees are struggling to afford basic necessities. Again, fuck the Republicans! The Republican Study Committee agenda states that Republican legislation known as the Social Security Reform Act would continue the gradual increase of the normal retirement age that current law has set in motion at a rate of 3 months per year until it increased by 3 years for those reaching 62 in 2040. 18 years from now. Republicans can go and fuck themselves. And, you know, they make this even more clear in their document, Project 2025. Like I said, Democrats, weak, feckless, pathetic. Republicans seek to actually fuck you over. God damn! Isn't the choice easy? Yeah. It's time we throw out both goddamn parties. Anyway, this has been over an hour. I'm going to go ahead and end it here. It's making me annoyed as fuck. But you get the gist. Anyway, as always, educate thyself. Think, read, study, learn. Someone tells you something you have trouble believing, ask them to cite their sources. I'll be putting my links and sources in the description box below the video. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you all in the next one. Until then, later.